Hi friends, this is your pal Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about something I recently encountered. And let's go ahead and dive in, and I'm going to start to explain it. So I was making my way in my Earth-based primary quest, right? And so I'm in my Earth-based primary quest, and I come across and I start to make my way through a language forest, right? And there's just a bunch of bog standard trees. But then as I'm making my way through this language forest, I encountered a glade, this beautiful glade. Now, what was this glade in this language forest? It was a phrase, and I'm going to give it to you right now. And the phrase was, "A memory I keep for you." And I was like, whoa, what? What did you? And I was like, wait a second. I'm just in a bog standard language forest. There's an oak, there's an ash, there's a spruce, right? But then I come around this corner, and there's this beautiful glade. A memory I keep for you, right? And I immediately stopped, and I took out my notebook and I wrote it down, right? Because I needed to remember it, right? And the reason why was this video. And what I want to talk about right now is, as Dragon Masters, executing a memory I keep for you. Okay, so Dungeon Masters build the world, okay? Dragon Masters bring that world to life, okay? A Dungeon Master's world has zero meaning without the catalyst, without the purpose established by the Dragon Masters, the players, right? And so basically, Dragon Masters go about their time at the Dungeons and Dragons table, and they witness the narrative. They witness the narrative that the Dungeon Master is creating. Excuse me. And they witness the narrative that the other Dragon Masters are creating. And they witness the interruptions, the divergences, and the parameterization of the math rocks, right? And I've been thinking a lot. I've been thinking a lot about player character death. It's a main theme it's a main theme in my thought patterns recently, right? Player character death. And I've been incredibly fortunate. The beginning from December to January to March, I went to 3 different conventions. I went to PAX Unplugged, I went to Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, and I went to EcclesiaCon. Okay, so all 3 I saw Dungeons and Dragons played, right? And at Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo and at EcclesiaCon, I saw something that was truly horrific to me, right? And it was the dead player character, the player character death wall. They had it at Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, and they had it at EcclesiaCon. And of course, it's just meant to be fun, right? Which of course terrifies Scott Garibay. I don't like Dungeons and Dragons being used for fun, and this is one of the reasons why, right? And so basically, both of these were quite traumatic for me to see these walls. And what they were was people were playing Dungeons and Dragons, and everything we did for the first 50 years was so completely wrong. And now we're starting to realize it, right? So where we landed, right, is first of all we tell people, oh, it's a convention game, right? So you don't have much time to do these things, right? But then they'll say, well, this is a one-shot, right? Now, I despise those. I don't believe in the term one-shot. Basically, you sit down at the table and an adventure is told, right? That doesn't mean that isn't the start of a campaign, right? Anyone on that table may pick up. I'm not saying they should. I'm saying this can happen, based on, and one of the reasons why is right now there is no established ownership structure for any of the narratives that are being told with Dungeons and Dragons. There are literally no contracts in the world, no laws that have been written to establish ownership of any story told with Dungeons and Dragons, right? We are literally in the frontier land with this, right? And so any one of those people could pick up that story and go from Dragon Master to Dungeon Master. I'm not saying they should. I'm not even saying they have the right to. I'm saying this is happening, right? And they can move forward and create, like, just because you declare as a Dungeon Master a one-shot, that doesn't mean it's going to be a one-shot. You may continue that. You may have a player reach out to you and say, I would like to continue that. Or you may have a Dragon Master say, I'm going to become the Dungeon Master and pick up that story from here, right? Or you may even have a Dragon Master say, I played this at a convention, I want to continue to play that, and then go get their own Dungeon Master to continue it, right? So one shot is meaningless, and it's only used by fools, okay? So, but what blew me away was people were playing Dungeons and Dragons, and then when their player character was killed, they would take the player character and go tack them up on this death wall, right? And this astounded me, and there was always like, and there was like a little bit of a celebration, or people would laugh, and people would come by and look at the wall, and it was terrifying to me because I don't understand it, right? And the reason why is every single player character I ever play goes onto my identity stack. So I would never give a player character that I had played, whether they were pre-generated or whether I had generated them, away. I would never put it somewhere where I didn't know its fate. So I have, so I have the player characters that I've played, right? I have the player character sheets for them. And I would never do this, especially if a player character died, right? I wouldn't just tack it on a wall where somebody could take it, or at the end of the convention, it might just be thrown out, right? Like, I would never allow the talisman of an element of my identity stack to go anywhere that I didn't know what was going to happen to it, right? And so basically I realized and there were dozens of these characters, every single person at Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo and at EcclesiaCon that was tacking their player character to the wall, basically they were incapable of keeping the memory of that character's death in any meaningful way, right? And so what astounded me is I realized then, I was like, oh my gosh, a memory I keep for you, right? So as Dragon Masters, we need to start, being present at the table and realizing, okay, we are building our own memories, right? We're keeping our player characters. We're adding these player characters to our identity stack. We're pouring ourselves into these vessels, pouring these vessels back into ourselves, right? And we're doing that, right? But one of the things I realized is that's not enough, right? We need to reach this point of a memory I keep for you. So every single one of these people, right, were not capable of keeping the memory, or not willing to keep the memory, right? So we need to keep the memory for them. And why? For the sake of the player character, right? It's like a pet. It's similar. There is some overlap, and there's some difference, and there's some variation. But I think this is a good analogy. It's not 100% it's not 100% overlay. It is accurate, but there is some parts that go. It's not if you were to look at these two things from above, there'd be some overlap on the edges. Okay, but it's like a pet who has a terrible owner, right? Like if you saw a dog that was abused. Wouldn't there be a point where you'd be like, I might take that pet, right? Right. And so basically this is what I'm saying is anyone who would ever do this with a player character is not capable or willing to keep these memories, right? But you and I can, right? A memory I keep for you, right? Now, why are we going to keep it for that person if they're not capable or willing of keeping the memory? Well, they may change, right? And we also may circle back to them. Or we may change them into a person that's worthy of receiving that player character back. You're like, well, at a convention, I'm probably never going to see that person again. Possible, but possibly not, right? And so, and we really need to start thinking about the care and feeding and preservation of player characters, right? And I think as Dragon Masters, we need to take this very seriously. A memory I keep for you. because you're not capable of keeping a memory or you're not willing to keep a memory. But the player character deserves better than you. And where you failed, I will pick up the slack. Every single word you just heard in this video is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.